Since childhood, I had idolized my father, Richard Dawson. He was a self-made businessman who built Dawson Enterprises from a small garage into a multi-million-dollar empire. Growing up, I wasn't interested in dolls or fairy tales. I was captivated by business meetings, financial reports, and the way my father commanded respect wherever he went. At 6 years old, while other kids watched cartoons, I sat beside my father at the dinner table, listening to him discuss deals and negotiations. By 10, I was reading business magazines instead of comic books. By 16, I was attending shareholder meetings, absorbing every word he said. I always believed he saw me as his future successor. So I worked tirelessly. I earned a full scholarship to one of the country's top business schools. I interned at major firms, gaining real-world experience that few my age had. After graduating, I worked for 3 years at a prestigious consulting firm, refining my skills even further. I did all of this with the belief that one day, I would stand beside my father, continuing the legacy he had built. I walked into Dawson Enterprises with confidence. I had scheduled a meeting with my father, prepared my resume, and even drafted a proposal on how I could help modernize the company's business strategies. I wasn't here asking for favors. I wasn't expecting special treatment just because I was his daughter. I was here because I had the skills, the experience, and I deserved to be here. I thought he would be proud. I thought he would recognize my value. But instead, he leaned back in his chair and said 5 words that changed my life forever. "You should find a husband." I froze. I thought I had misheard him. "Excuse me." I forced a laugh, hoping it was just a bad joke. He sighed, as if I was the one being difficult. "Lena, you're 26. It's time to start thinking about marriage, not work. You don't belong in a place like this. Business is a man's world." His words cut through me like a knife. "But I have a degree. I have experience. I've worked so hard." He raised a hand to silence me. "Daniel will take over the company one day. He is the future of Dawson Enterprises." Daniel. Daniel, who spent most of his time in VIP clubs, throwing thousands of dollars on overpriced champagne. Daniel, who wrecked 3 cars in 2 years and simply laughed it off as a learning experience. Daniel, who barely graduated college and had never worked a single day in his life. And yet, my father believed he was more worthy of inheriting the company than I was. "You don't think I'm capable?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked me straight in the eye, without a moment of hesitation. "I think you should focus on more important things," he said slowly. "Marriage, children, taking care of a family. A good husband will provide for you, Lena. You don't need to worry about work." He said it so casually, so effortlessly, as if 20 years of my hard work meant absolutely nothing. I looked at my father, the man I had admired, the man I had spent my entire life trying to make proud, and I realized a harsh truth. He had never seen me as his successor. He had never even seen me as his equal. I had spent my entire youth chasing a seat at the table, not realizing he had never intended to give me one. I walked out of his office with clenched fists, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt humiliated. I felt betrayed. But more than anything, I was furious. If my father didn't believe in me, I would make him regret it. I left my father's office with my fists clenched, my heart feeling like it was about to explode. His words kept repeating in my head. "You don't need a job, you need a husband. Daniel is the future of the company. Business is a man's world." Everything I had believed in, everything I had thought I would achieve had all been a lie. I had spent my entire life preparing for a position my father never intended to give me. I wasn't just disappointed. I was enraged. And I knew I had only 2 choices. Accept my fate, bow my head, and disappear from the business world. Prove to my father that he was wrong. I chose the second option. But I wouldn't do it by begging for a chance. I would destroy Dawson Enterprises from the outside. Within a week of my father's rejection, I sent an application to Vanguard Corp, Dawson Enterprises' biggest competitor. Within days, they invited me for an interview. I walked into Vanguard's boardroom, no longer the disappointed daughter of Richard Dawson. I was a warrior stepping onto my battlefield. Vanguard's CEO, Charles Whitman, looked at me with curiosity. "You're Richard Dawson's daughter. Why do you want to work for us?" I didn't avoid the question. I looked him straight in the eye and said clearly, because I know exactly how Dawson Enterprises operates. I know their weaknesses. I know their outdated strategies. And I know how to help Vanguard surpass them. Whitman smiled. Interesting. And what position are you aiming for? I'm not here to be an assistant or a secretary, I replied. I want to be part of the strategy team. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued by my boldness. If you can prove your worth, the position is yours. And I did. From day one, I threw myself into work like a storm. I analyzed every aspect of Dawson Enterprises, identifying weaknesses in their business model, flaws in their strategy, and opportunities they were failing to capitalize on. I knew Dawson Enterprises was slow to innovate, relying on its old reputation instead of progressing. I knew they were too dependent on a specific group of clients, making them vulnerable to market shifts. I knew they ignored technology, while the industry was advancing rapidly, and I used those exact weaknesses to attack them. After 6 months, we launched a campaign that shook Dawson Enterprises to its core. Vanguard rolled out a new strategy, targeting Dawson's biggest clients, offering better services at more competitive prices. We modernized technology that Dawson had been hesitant to adopt, gaining a massive edge in the market. Dawson Enterprises, which had dominated the industry for years, started crumbling. Revenue plummeted, major clients switched to Vanguard, stock prices fell, and for the first time in decades, Richard Dawson experienced failure. And the person behind all of it? Me. I was no longer the daughter he rejected. I had become his worst nightmare. Early that morning, my phone buzzed. The name on the screen, Richard Dawson. I let it ring for a few seconds before slowly picking up. Lena, can you come see me? His voice no longer held the cold authority it once did. It carried worry, maybe even desperation. I stared at the screen, an odd feeling washing over me. 6 months ago, I had begged him to give me a chance. Now, he was the one begging me. I smirked. All right, I'll meet you at the office. This time, I wouldn't walk into Dawson Enterprises as a daughter seeking recognition. I would walk in as the one holding the fate of his company in my hands. And my father would have to face the consequences of the decision he made 6 months ago. I stepped into Dawson Enterprises once again, but this time, everything was different. 6 months ago, I had been the daughter my father dismissed, belittled, and pushed aside simply because I wasn't a man. Today, I returned as the one who had shaken his empire. As I walked through the lobby, employees glanced at me with curiosity and concern. They knew who I was. They knew what I had done. And they knew why I was here. The office door opened, and there he was, Richard Dawson, the man who once thought I was worthless in the business world, now sitting at his desk with exhaustion on his face and worry in his eyes. Lena, he sighed, attempting to maintain his old composure. Sit down. I didn't rush. I took my time, silently enjoying the shift in power. 6 months ago, he had looked at me with disdain. Today, he looked at me with fear. I sat down, crossing my arms. What do you want to talk about? I asked, making no effort to hide the ice in my voice. He blinked, momentarily caught off guard by my demeanor. I was wrong. A simple sentence, but one I had never heard from my father in my entire life. The company is struggling, he continued. We're losing market share to Vanguard. I need you to help regain what we've lost. I narrowed my eyes. Struggling? I thought Daniel was the future of Dawson Enterprises. His hands clenched on the desk, but he didn't argue. He knew I was right. Daniel doesn't have the ability to lead, he admitted bitterly, as if the words physically pained him. I let out a cold chuckle. Oh, I thought you believed men were naturally better at business than women? He didn't respond. We stared at each other in silence. After a long pause, he finally said, I misjudged you, but now I see that you have real talent. If you come back to Dawson Enterprises, I'll give you an executive role. We can save the company together. A tempting offer. 6 months ago, this was all I had ever wanted. But now, I had a high-ranking position at Vanguard, a company that was defeating Dawson Enterprises every single day. I had power, I had respect, and most importantly, I no longer needed my father. I looked at him and I knew. He didn't truly respect me. He was just desperate. I stood up. You don't need me. You need someone to save the company from the downfall you created. His face darkened. Lena, you can't just walk away. I tilted my head. Oh, 6 months ago, you cast me aside without a second thought. Now I'm simply doing the same. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the office, leaving my father sitting there, a man destroyed by his own arrogance. And I had no regrets. Dawson Enterprises never recovered from its mistakes. Within a year, it was acquired by a larger corporation, one that Vanguard had financially backed. The company my father once prided himself on, the company he believed only a man could run, ceased to exist. Daniel, he disappeared the moment he realized the company could no longer fund his lavish lifestyle. And my father, he lost everything. Not just his company, but the respect of the very people who once admired him. As for me, I never looked back. I had found my worth, and that was something my father could never take away from me. My story isn't just about betrayal or revenge. It's a lesson in self-worth and the cost of arrogance. One, never let anyone define your value. If someone refuses to appreciate you, walk away and prove them wrong. 2, success is the best revenge. I didn't have to destroy my father, he did it himself by failing to recognize the daughter he had. 3, gender does not determine ability. A woman can be just as strong, intelligent, and capable of running a business, and I did it without my father's approval. For people who don't respect you will only come back when they need you. Remember this, they don't truly change, they're just desperate. What do you think? If you were in my position, would you have returned to save Dawson Enterprises? Have you ever been underestimated only for the same person to later ask for your help? Do you believe arrogance always comes with a price? Share your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to hear your perspective.